I'm so glad you came back to the Storytime, Marilyn Storytime here at North Little Rock Public Library. We're so pleased that you love to hear stories. You know, starting the new year, it's kind of fun to get some new books and to hear some new stories and just to come into the library and see what's new. So if you haven't been here lately, be sure and come by. We've got lots of exciting things happening this year. Well, today's story, you know, it's the new year. Maybe you made a resolution, and maybe you've decided to be happy this year. I hope everybody's happy, because happiness is something that we all need. Today's story is about how to grow happiness, and Jerome the Gnome is going to tell us, or show us maybe, how to do it, I hope. So the story goes like this. Warble, the little songbird, was flying along in the garden. She happened to see Jerome's window open, and so she flew in. She had something in her mouth, and Jerome said, "Well, hello, Warble. What's that in your mouth?" She said, "Why, it's the seed of happiness." He said, "The seed of happiness? I haven't ever heard of that before. That looks very interesting." Now, of course, if you know about gnomes, gnomes are collectors of little things. They like to collect rocks and sticks and acorns and all sorts of fun things. And Jerome was no different. He had a whole shelf full of collectible treasures that he had gotten from his garden. And he said, "Ooh, that seed looks really neat." And so he went over to his shelf and he found a jar. He brought that jar out and he said, you know, I have something that I think you'll like. Inside this jar is a nice little red piece of yarn. I'll bet you could use this yarn. I would trade this yarn for that wonderful seed of happiness if you wouldn't mind. And the bird, Warble, said, "Well, that would be great." So she dropped it into his jar and he put the lid on. She took off with the yarn and she was so happy. She said, "I'll be able to use that for my spring nest this next year." So Warble was gone. Now Jerome was looking at that seed of happiness. He said, I've never seen anything like that before. It's really interesting. I'm going to just set it on my table and wait for me to be happy." And he stood there, and he sat there, and he looked at it. He said, "Well, it's not making me happy yet. I wonder how it works." He shook it, and that seed just bounced up and down. He tapped on it. He heard that little noise. He said, "I know, I'll just count to 10. Maybe it takes a little time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think this seed of happiness is broken. I think Warble tricked me and got my yarn and didn't even give me a good seed. I don't know what's wrong with that seed." He said, "Oh, I'm sure it's broken." While he was talking about that and looking at that seed, his friend Matilda the squirrel came in and she said, "Broken? You've got a broken seed? Let me see it. I might want to eat it." He said, No, you can't eat that seed. It's supposed to be a seed of happiness, but it's not working. It hasn't made me happy at all. In fact, it's making me a little bit mad because it's not doing anything and I've been tricked. Well, Matilda said, "Well, my friend Beamer the robot came with me. I'm a robot, I'm a solar panel robot, and I can fix things," he said. He said, "Well, good, I hope you can fix this seed." He said, "Well, I know how to take care of that seed of happiness. Put it in the sun. Anything is good in the sun." He said, "Oh, that's a good idea." So he took the seed out, and he put it in his hand, and they all walked outside. And he took that little seed, and he put it on a rock. He put it in the sun. The sun was shining on it, and the robot said, "Oh, I think it's going to be nice in the sun. It will be perfect." Well, Jerome still looked at that seed. He said, "Well, it's still not making me very happy. I don't think it works at all." Oh, well then Turtle came along from the pond. He said, "Oh, what are you guys talking about? You woke me up. I was sleeping over here in this nice warm sun." They said, "Well, we have this seed. We put it on the rock and we're trying to warm it up and see if it brings me happiness, but it's just bringing me frustration." The turtle said, "Well, anything that is worth keeping needs a little water. Maybe you should give it some water." So Jerome threw it in the pond. The turtle said, "Oh, I don't think you need that much water." He said, "Well, Well, I'll go down and get it. So he went down in the pond and he fished it out. And while he was down there, Sherwin, the worm, came out and he said, "Excuse me, what are you doing with that seed?" "Oh, I saw you down in the pond." And he said, I don't know what you're doing, but that seed looks really interesting. Jerome said, "Well, it's the seed of happiness, and it's not making any of us happy so far." The worm said, "Well, I think you need some dirt, some good dirt, like some composted dirt. Maybe something with eggshells and coffee grounds and a little bit of paper towels and newspapers." "Oh," he said, "I got some of that." So Jerome went home, got some dirt, and he put the dirt in a little pile, and he put the seed in there, and he put some water on it, and he left it sitting in the sun. And he looked at it. All his friends sat and looked at that pile of dirt with that seed in there. And they thought, it's not doing anything. It's not making any of us happy. Warble, I wonder where Warble is. I'm going to tell him to give me my yarn back. This was a no good seed. Well, before long, Glinda, the butterfly fairy, came flying along. She said, "Oh, what's the matter, everyone? You all look so unhappy." She said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we're trying to plant this seed of happiness, and it's not making anybody happy." She said, "Well, anything worth keeping needs love. Put some love in it." "Love," they said. Well, so Jerome went home, got some little white rocks, and he said, "I'll put these rocks around it in a little heart shape, and I'll just look at it. And every day I'll put some sun on it and give it some water, and I'll give it a little more nourishment in the dirt, and maybe something will make me happy soon." He said, "I'm feeling a little better about it, in fact." Well, before long, after a few weeks, I guess maybe 5 or 10 days, something came up from the ground. It was a little sprout. It was green and it had leaves on it, and they thought, "Oh, something is growing. There is some happiness." Everybody was shouting with joy, and Jerome watched it for days, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew into a big, long vine, and one day something huge grew on it. Jerome said, friends, come see." And when they came to see, it was a huge watermelon growing on that vine. "Oh, it does bring us happiness. Let's have a picnic." So they picked that watermelon, sat down, cut that watermelon in pieces, and they went and ate that watermelon, and it was delicious. And from that time on, they all took the seeds, and they all had their own seeds of happiness. And they all lived happily ever after, because, anything that brings happiness takes time and patience and love. So I hope you find happiness today. Thank you for joining in. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.